My hope is to inspire you to take a step into a direction that maybe is different. Maybe it's changing some things around. I'm a goal-oriented guy, okay? I like to know that at the end of the year, I have accomplished goals. Last year, I set some really big goals. I wanted to race the Boston Marathon, which is the marathon for marathons, okay? Boston Marathon's it. I had to qualify with a certain time. I hired a coach, all these things. And then midway through the training, I got diagnosed with some cancer, skin cancer. It was the bad kind of skin cancer. They had to do several surgeries, and all of a sudden it derailed my goal. I didn't get there, okay? I was so close. Seriously, my times were looking really good, and then all of a sudden I got derailed. And it was like, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? At some point, I'm going to have to admit that there's no way I can do it. I kept trying to move because you had to qualify first to get to Boston. And so I had a race at the beginning of June, and what happened was that our baby, number 7, Courage, he was born on the weekend that I was supposed to race, so I missed that. Then the surgeries happened, and then I was like, okay, I can race in the fall. I'll do the Twin Cities Marathon. I've raced that one before. I can get the time there. I had to run 26.2 miles under 3 hours. And I was like, that's the one I'm going to do it in. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't in shape enough. I couldn't get the distance done. I hadn't recovered enough from all the surgery. So I was like, okay, November, I'm going to go to Philadelphia. There is one there that I can qualify for. And so we had it set there. And I just couldn't get back into shape. It was just a hurdle. I was fighting through, and I didn't accomplish my goal. Now, I was not, by any stretch of imagination, devastated in that. And today I want to use something that I adhere to when I strike out to make goals, that my goals aren't the main priority, that there is something that they are coming out of. And I'm going to use an illustration of these painted balls here. This is not DNA strands or any of those things, okay? It is something different than that. I know some of you see that. Now, those that are over here, you can't see it. Let me just hold it up. These are not to make a DNA thing, but it's to illustrate a point in a little bit here. And we're kicking off a series called When Life, Work, and Family Collide. When all three of them seem to intersect at the same time, what do you do? And I'm going to start with the principle that you might be surprised the pastor telling you, you need to cheat. You need to cheat. I know you did not expect that to hear that at church, but you need to choose to cheat. And I'm not talking about in the context of cheating the negative, because if you've ever been cheated on as an individual, you know how negative that word seems. Oh boy, to cheat, I know. I'm not talking about the negative word of cheating. When I looked up the definition of cheating, I learned a few things. One, the first definition, the number one definition of to cheat is the negative kind, to take advantage of someone, to be sneaky, to be stealthy, is to do something deceptively. That's the word that we all kind of know cheat means. The number two part of cheating is to avoid something. To avoid something. That's where I want to hone in. When I say to cheat, that's what I'm talking about today, is to hone in. I wrote it like this. So we cheat, we give up certain opportunities for the sake of other opportunities. We invest in some relationships while neglecting others. We allocate our time the best we can, knowing that all the while that somebody's going to feel cheated. Unfortunately, that somebody is usually someone we care a deal about. Because you're already cheating in life. I'm not calling you a cheater. Don't walk out of here going, the pastor at Unlock Church called me a cheater. That's not what I'm saying, but we are all cheating someone. When it comes to these three areas, when it comes to your life, your work, and your family, you're cheating somewhere. It's a matter of fact. It's like this. If you work a 9-to-5 job, let's just use that because that's what we're most all commonly known. You might work a different kind of job, but it's like, okay, I'm going to stay later to get more done so I don't have to take it home. And all of a sudden, guess what? You're cheating on your family and staying at work longer. Or you're taking more projects. I'm going to work these weekends. And hear me, it's not bad to do these things. It's just when it carries on after on after on, well, all of a sudden we find ourselves, we're unintentionally cheating on probably the thing that we love the most. Think about it. Where are you most replaceable at? Work. You can be replaced. I know we don't want to think like that, but let's just put it in the context of Unlock Church. Let's use me as an illustration. You guys can get a different pastor. I can be fired and you can hire somebody else. I'm replaceable here. Now, I would hope that never would happen. I love what we're doing here. I love the growth of Unlocked Church. I love the impact we're making as a baby church as we're growing into the community of Maple Grove and surrounding. I love what's happening here, but I'm replaceable. When you come to dad, I'm a dad of 7 kids. That area I'm not replaceable in. Yes, they can get a stepdad, but I'm their dad. There can be other men that would step into my kids' lives and can help raise them, but I'm their dad. For better or worse, my kids are stuck with me. When we were watching that video a second ago where that guy put on the stocking cap and wanted to be cool with his kids, I just like, is that me? Am I that guy? Maybe I am. I just thought I was cool. No, my kids, though, don't think that, I don't think. But I am not replaceable as dad. I'm not replaceable as Holly's husband. Yes, she can get another one. And some days she might go, boy, it'd be nice if there was a guy that would act his age. I don't know. The other day we were talking, she goes, I like your beard. And I was like, why? She's like, because it makes you look like you're older than me. It made me want to shave it off at that moment. I was like, I got to shave it off. But I was like, okay, if it makes you feel good, then I've grown the beard for you, baby. Anyways, I condition it for you to keep it soft. Nonetheless, beard struggles. So I'm not replaceable as Holly's husband. She can get another one, but it's not going to, it just be different. So I can choose to cheat on my family where I'm not replaceable, or I can choose to cheat in the areas that I'm replaceable in. And I'm not talking about in the negative way where you're taking advantage of your workplace. Because hear me, everything we say today is in light of what Jesus is teaching us. So I'm not trying to teach something other than Jesus talking about where he comes along and he teaches, hey, when you're working, work as if you're working for me, not your boss. So wherever your job lands you, whatever you do, don't work as if you're pleasing your manager or your boss. You work as if you're working for God, where God is watching you and he's going, wow, you're doing an amazing job. That's if you're retired and you are working in your yard, then work in a way that would honor God. If you're shoveling snow, shovel in a way that you're like, this honor you, God. It changes everything all of a sudden. We don't get grumpy about certain tasks that we have to do because it's like, no, God, I'm doing these mundane tasks, but I'm going to do it in such a way that honors you. Imagine if you kicked off this new year moving forward, going, everything I do, I'm going to try to honor God in what I do. Everything. From the most mundane things I must do to the most important things. We're trying to teach our 2 oldest, Legend and Epic. Legend turns 10 this week, and he won't let us forget that he's moving out of the single digits. He's pretty excited about that. Never, Dad, will I ever be in single digits again. I'm moving into double digits. I'm like, well done. You've graduated. I'm not sure if he's trying to build up that he should get bigger gifts on his birthday. I'm not sure the advantage he thinks he's giving him, but he's excited about being double digits. And I'm like, one day you're not going to be excited about double digits, okay? I think it happens at age 23. At age 23, you stop caring what you turn because it's like, you're excited about 21, 18 excited, 16 excited, clearly going into 10, you're excited, going to 13, you're excited, all these highlights, and then all of a sudden you turn 23 and it's like, how old are you? I don't really know. I think I forgot. Well, you just don't care anymore because there's no more monumental moments unless you don't care about age. Like for me, I'm turning 40 this year. I'm pretty amped about it. I'm like 40 years old. What am I going to do with myself? Holly goes, man, for your 40th birthday, I think you want to go to New York and see Jimmy Fallon at the Tonight Show. I was like, I do? I was like, I don't want to do that. She's like, you do. I was like, this sounds like what you want to do for your 40th birthday. And she's like, yeah, maybe. I was like, because I don't want to do that in February. That doesn't sound like fun at all. I was like, let's come up with a different 40-year celebration. And we had a good laugh at it. But I'm excited about turning 40. I'm like, I've made it. There was a moment in my life when I jumped out of an airplane several times, like, I might not make it to my next birthday. But I've made it. And so my hope is today that we inspire you to ask, what is Jesus saying to you for you in the new year, and what are you going to do about it? And then last week we attached 2 other things to this now. Not just what is Jesus saying to you and what are you going to do about it, but what are the tangible things you're going to do about it? Like, what is the next step for you? And then the fourth piece is, what are you going to tell? Who are you going to tell? Because when you tell someone, all of a sudden there's accountability. When you come along and say, hey, I want to race in the Boston Marathon, all of a sudden when I didn't want to work out on certain days, I'm reminded that I've told a lot of people I'm trying to do that. And so it got me up off the couch, or it got me to stop hitting the snooze button and go outside and run. Because I knew there were people that knew what my goals were, and so therefore I was trying to execute my goals. But if you can take one principle and attach it into your life right now and say, okay, I'm going to work as if I'm working for God in everything I do this year, it will change how you feel about the most ordinary tasks and the most complicated tasks. And like I was saying earlier with Legend and Epic, we're trying to teach them, or we're not teaching, we're giving them chores. And we're giving them fun chores, like cleaning the bathroom, because they're young little boys that seem to miss the toilet. It's like, I'm just baffled by this. If you have boys, it's like, no, this is the target, the bullseye. Hit that. But they miss constantly, so their job is to clean the bathroom because mom and dad aren't going to clean up after them. And so we're teaching them, and the first time they cleaned it, it wasn't cleaned at all. It was like, did you even get out a rag? Well, one, and then show me what you did. I rubbed the wall down in the shower. I was like, that's not clean. You teach them. And then I was trying to teach them, hey, you're not trying to clean this to please mom and dad. You are trying to clean this in a way that would honor God in this deal. But this is a gross and dirty job, Dad. Does God really care? I said, I don't know if God cares about the cleanliness of the shower. I don't see that anywhere. But I do see where God cares about the heart. He looks at our heart and wants to know the condition of our heart. And if our heart is, man, I'm doing my best that I can, that's where God smiles upon us. So may you attach that principle this year, that you're going to work as if working for God. And that you're going to choose to cheat this year. That you're going to cheat where you're irreplaceable and not where you're replaceable. But I know how it goes. But hold on. If I work longer, I make more money. Therefore, I can provide a better environment for my family. Those that I love, we can go on the vacations that we want. We can pay for our house. We can get bigger stuff and grander things. I understand the tension that sits there. But here's the real tension in that. If you boil it all down, the very thing that you're saying you're working for when you're cheating on your family, you might not have them around when you come back home because they will have broken down. They will have missed you. And I want to use a story to illustrate it. And imagine I came to all of you today, and I had one of these cinder blocks, and I gave it to you to hold. And I told you how important it was with this cinder block. Listen, this cinder block, you have to hold it. You can't set it down. If you put it down on the ground, I will lose my life. If you drop it on the ground at any point, life is over for me as we know it. You can't drop this, and you get the severity of this. I know you have to use your imaginations here. We're making you work this morning. But I give it to you. You have to hold on to the brick while I leave. Hold on to the brick. Don't let it fall. These are I don't know how much a cinder block weighs, but they got to be like 25 pounds. Am I close? Anybody? Do you know? We're going with 25. 25 pounds, I got a yes, thank you. I feel like I'm an auctioneer all of a sudden. Yes, you got it. But 25 pounds, you're holding it. And I'm like, I'll be right back. I got to go take care of a few things. I got 7 kids. I got to go deal with 7 kids. I'll be right back. And you're holding it, and you're just standing there, and people start walking by going, what you doing? I'm holding a brick for my friend. He told me I can't drop it, so I'm just holding it. He said to be right back. Oh. Interesting. You're a good friend. And they walk on. You're standing there with the brick. And I come back to you like after an hour, and I come back to you, go, I'm back. You're like, oh, man, I held your brick for you. I'm like, that's great. I'm just here to tell you I really got caught up in a few things. So I need another hour or so. Will you hold on to the brick? You can't let it fall. Probably being a good friend, you go, yeah, I'll hold on to it a little bit more. That's all right. And I leave, and I go take care of my 7 kids again, and all of a sudden, it's becoming evening all of a sudden, and those people that saw you in the morning come by and go, you're still holding the brick? Yeah, it's just things came up for him, and he's running a little behind, but it'll be okay. It's getting a little tiring to hold this, but 25 pounds, I can manage it a little bit longer. And all of a sudden, you see from the distance a car pulling up. You're like, oh, he's coming right now. The headlights are on. You come. And somebody gets out of the car you don't recognize, and they come to go, hey, he's running a little late. Something came up, and so he'll be right here afterwards. He just told me to tell you, hold on to the brick a little bit longer. Being a great friend, you're going to probably get really frustrated, but you're going to hold on to the brick because you know the severity of holding on to the brick. You're like, if I let go of this brick, the dude dies. This is not good. I got to hold on to the brick. You're starting to get tired. Your arms are starting to shake. Some of you are like, I'd have dropped it after an hour, Scott. Okay, so I told you to use your imagination, right? So you're holding on to the brick. It's been all day. You're shaking. That person walks away, and you're just shaking. You're like, mentally, you're like, I got to hold it. But physically, you're so tired and exhausted, and you're just going, I can't. And you let it go, and all of a sudden, I come back, and I'm like, you let it fall? I don't feel good anymore. I'm going to die. And you're like, I held it just up until a few moments ago, but I couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted. Your heart never changed in the moment. Your heart was like, I want to help you. I want to make sure you succeed, but I got tired physically and I couldn't do it anymore. What was I doing along the way? I was cheating on you on something else, and you were paying the price for it. When we choose to cheat with everything that we are replaceable in, the place that we are irreplaceable, they pay the price. It costs them something, and you might not be able to see it right away. Like you holding the brick, the first hour good, third time coming back, you're kind of shaking. It wasn't until later in the evening did you feel it and you just couldn't do it anymore. That, as a pastor of over 17 years now, when I have sat down to counsel married people, or when I was a youth pastor, kids that felt used, it wasn't that it just happened yesterday. It was, this has been going on for a long time and I can't handle it anymore. And when you pull in the parents, if you're dealing with young people that felt unloved or unwanted, or you bring in the other spouse and you're sharing with them the other person, they feel, oh, I didn't know. I thought it was okay. We talked about this 6 months ago that I was going to do this for this amount of time. And what happens is they don't want to let the other person down, so they hold on to the brick as long as they can, and then they let it go. Now, here's the tension that we got to pay attention to in this moment is that we're going, but if I don't work as long, we can't afford where we're at. These are things between you and Jesus, not between me and you. As Jesus speaks to you, maybe you're sitting here going, I'm a single parent. If I don't work, I understand all of our situations are very unique. But at the end of the day, when we adhere to godly principles in our lives, God does bless, and we're going to use one story to illustrate all of this. But before we get to that, when I wrote it like this: when work, family, when life, work, and family collide, it's about establishing priorities. You got to go back to your priority. A priority is something that you put ahead of something else. A priority is something you say yes to, even when it means saying no to other important things. Everybody cheats like this. It's a principle already at work in your life, one way or another. You either know it or you don't know it. And here's what my point is with principles really quick, and this is where this illustration comes in. This white ball represents your life. And you already have principles working in your life right now. You have principles. The orange ball represents the principles in your life. Those principles are, one is you're already cheating on your family or on your job. Someone you're cheating on, it's a principle, because you can't give 100% of your time to everybody. So that principle is there. Some of you, the principle could be health. Some of you, a principle could be that I want to read books. I want to, maybe that's not a principle, maybe that's the goal. Maybe the principle is I value knowledge. So therefore, my goal is to read X amount of books. Here's my point with this is, let's say for me, I told you a story about, man, I wanted to go to race Boston. Didn't get there. The purple ball represents a goal. The orange ball represents the principle. My principle in my life is not the principle of getting to Boston. My principle in my life is I want to be healthy. So I run. So I work out. Then attached out of the principle are my goals. I want to race Ironman. Ironman is a 170-mile race. I raced one a year and a half ago down in Louisville, Kentucky. So hard, but so rewarding. But the principle is I want to be healthy. In the Ironman, yes, it's an audacious goal. It's huge, 170 miles of swimming, biking, and running. Why would you do that? Because I want to be healthy, and it provides me a way to continue to be healthy because I have to focus on what I eat and drink and sleep and what my workout regimens are, because that's a goal is attached to the principle. When my principle isn't there, and all of a sudden it's just, what happens sometimes is we come along and go in the new year, oh, you know what? I want to be way less. And all of a sudden we come in and try to attach a goal straight to life, and then all of a sudden we have a bad week, we eat something we shouldn't, we had too much ice cream or whatever it is. What happens is this defines our life all of a sudden, that I didn't accomplish my goal. I love goals, but when they're placed in the right context, it's the principles and out of the principles we form the goal. So what are your principles in your life? What principles do you need to take and put into your life? Is it just like when I was using this one representing, I just want to lose a few pounds, and all of a sudden, well, I'm not motivated to do that anymore, and it's because it's just a goal. The principle needs to be, I want to be healthier. And all of a sudden, when you realize I want to be healthier, and being healthier is like I need to lose a few pounds, because that allows me to be healthier, allows me to be here longer with my kids, that allows me to be a better employer or employee. It allows me to do a lot of different things if I'm healthier, and so out of health, that becomes the principle. Now I'm going to lose weight because I want to be healthy. This year when I got diagnosed with the skin cancer and had the surgeries, it didn't derail me from working out. What it did is it just slowed me for a season, and then as soon as I could, I got back into working out, and I'm still trying to get back to where I was because I value health. So what in your life do you value, and it needs to be a principle? Or maybe you should start with, what principles do you want to adhere to? Maybe today you're just going, oh man, the principle of I'm going to choose to cheat. I'm no longer going to cheat unknowingly. I'm going to choose to cheat on the things that I'm replaceable in and not irreplaceable in. It's a principle. Then all of a sudden the goals change. So let's use this ball as the goal of, man, I'm going to choose to cheat on the places that I'm replaceable in. Now all of a sudden the goal is I'm going to be home by 4 o'clock. No matter what's happening, 4 o'clock I'm home. Or 5 o'clock I'm going to be home. I'm not going to stay later because my goal is, or my principle is to choose to cheat on the places I'm replaceable, not irreplaceable. So all of a sudden you start making goals that are attached to a principle, and so therefore it changes the game of how you sustain the goals. Hopefully that helps you today, that maybe you're going to examine some of the goals. Because what happens all of a sudden is like, yeah, I should read more. I'll just read more. I'll just start reading more. And then all of a sudden it's not a real principle. You don't have a conviction to it. Jesus didn't say read more. And so you're just trying to do something because everybody else is doing it. And then you find yourself not doing it any longer. And you find yourself frustrated because your goals then define you. Where if your principles are around going, what does Jesus say through the lens of Jesus? What are the goals I need to have? Okay, what's the principle that goes through? Attaching the principle to your life. Principles are a powerful thing. It's the same way gravity affects everything around us. That's a principle. You can say you don't believe in that principle of gravity, then let's go to the roof. And let's just step out then, if you don't think gravity is a real principle. You guys chuckle because you're like, nope, that's a real, no one has to tell me not to do that. I understand it. It's a principle at work in my life. That's why I'm sitting and not floating in the air. It's powerful. A principle influences everything in your universe. Whether you are aware of the principle or not, it still applies. You can ignore it or you can leverage it. But either way, it goes right on affecting your world. You can break a rule or not make a goal, but not a principle. In fact, by failing to observe a principle, you can break yourself up against it. Think about that. Not realizing that we all are cheating on someone somehow, not in the negative, but we're choosing to cheat in some way, that you are going to either break yourself up against it or you're going to apply it to succeed in the areas you actually want to succeed in. And Holly and I use this all the time. There are things that we say no to because we are parenting right now. We're in the minutia of parenting. When you have a soon-to-be 10-year-old and a 6-month-old, you're in the middle of it. And that means we have to say no to some traveling. We have to say no to some certain vacations because you just can't take them all. We have to say no to some events, and it's not, oh, poor me. We understand by saying no allows us to be able to do the things we want to do as a family. Because we're choosing to say we're going to cheat on those things. We're going to miss out on some of those things, but it's choosing to cheat so that we can continue to do the principles in our lives as a family. Remember, I'm not here today to say you got to do it just like Holly and I. Holly and I are going through the idea of what is Jesus speaking to us as mom and dad of our children or a married couple, and what are we going to do about it? So what is Jesus saying to you today on it? I'm going to use a story in Daniel, and we're going to wrap up. Daniel is a young man, a Jewish man, that became a captive of an arch enemy in his days. The Babylonians came in, and they took over the Israelites, and they made them slaves. And the king had a great idea. He said, hey, what we need to do to help infiltrate the Jewish culture, because the goal always when an army comes and throws over another army is you want to take away their identity and make them become more like you. And the best way to do that is to take their youngest and brightest and make them like them, so other people go, oh, look, Daniel is who we're going to talk about. Look at Daniel. He's worshiping their gods. He's eating their things. He's doing what all of these guys are doing, so we should follow suit. And all of a sudden, they forget their heritage. They forget the God that they were serving. They forget their Jewish lineage, and they begin to become like their enemy. And so the king comes along and says, give me the youngest and brightest, the most in shape, the good-looking and brightest people, and bring them in, and we're going to feed them what we eat, and they're going to drink the wine the king eats or drinks, and we are going to make them like us. And so we pick up a story where that happens with Daniel. Daniel was sat down, told them this is what's going to happen. Now Daniel, the perspective of Daniel, if you have your Bible, you want to write this down, you can go to Daniel chapter 1. This is where the whole story takes place. And Daniel, think about it, in his position, just lost everything he knew. The God that he loved let his world get crushed, and he became a slave. Daniel could have chosen to be like, God, who are you? Way to go, God. You just let me out high and dry. I didn't see this happening this year. I was expecting just a bright future, and all of a sudden, here I am. I'm a slave to my enemies. Way to go, God. Daniel could have said, when the king came and said, hey, you're going to eat all the foods I eat, he could have said, great. I want to get rid of our standards because it ain't working for me. But what happens is Daniel adheres to a principle, and out of the principle, he makes a decision. The principle is that to honor God with everything. So Daniel comes to the king's workers and says, okay, look, I know you want me to eat these things and drink these things. In our Jewish culture, what you're giving us to eat goes against what God has told us to do. He's told us not to eat these things, to not eat unclean food, and that is considered unclean. He's told we're not to get drunk on wine, so we want to drink water. So Daniel comes in and has a conversation because he's about to change something drastically in his life because he's saying, look, if I go this route in long term, it's going to hurt me. So he comes to, if you're checking the story, you can go to verse 9 because this is where Daniel comes to the official, and he gives a statement that is like, hey, I want to change things around here, but I'm going to ask your permission. Maybe some of you, where you're working, you're like, okay, for a long time, I've been cheating on my family or my kids, and I don't know how to change this. Take from Daniel how he did it, because he goes to his enemy and says, listen, he could have gone, I ain't eating what you're giving me. Forget you, man. You're my enemy. I don't have to listen to you. I'm not going to do it. You better just kill me now. Or I'm just going to leave, okay? I'm just going to do my own thing. Daniel didn't respond that way because he adheres to a godly principle, which is honor and love your enemy. And so, or love your enemies. Jesus talks about that a lot. And so he comes in, he honors his enemy by love and goes, this is what I like to do. Can we do like a 10-day trial where I eat the foods that our God told us that we should eat? I will drink only water. And the official in verse 9 is like, hold up now. If we do that, I'm afraid of what the king's going to say to me. So verse 9, now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. Verse 10, but the official told Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king who has assigned you food and drink. Why should I see to you looking worse than the other young men of your age? The king would then have my head because of you. And so the king comes, or the guy that's working for the king comes on, hold up, you're scaring me with this. Why am I going to do this? Because my life is on the line here. But Daniel's coming in a non-threatening, hey, I'm doing this. He's proposing something of change through a principle in his life. And we're about to find, because Daniel continues to honor God in all principles, God does bless Daniel's life in a massive way. So Daniel comes and says, this is let's just try this. And so Daniel continues to say at verse 11, then said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. And somebody in here goes, I'm going to try that diet. I do think there is a Daniel diet out there. I've never done it. You just heard it. Just vegetables and water. And so Daniel says, just give us vegetables and drink water. After 10 days, compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat royal food and treat your servants in accordance to what you see. So let's put this into your context. You want to make a change. You want to come home early. You need to make the adjustments so that your kids aren't sitting in some after-school program all night because you're like, okay, I realize I'm the most important thing in their life. Maybe Jesus is speaking to you on those things, and you're going to make those changes. You can't just go in and go, this ain't working for me, bye. Take those steps and go, what are some things that I can try for 3 days and see if it works? Oh, that's not good. Let's try another 3 things. Can we learn from Daniel and begin to make those adjustments and not drastic adjustments where you can't come back from? You ever heard the term, don't burn your bridges? Because when we come, a lot of people just come in, I got to change now, and we drop everything. All of a sudden that bridge gets burned and you can't go back to it. Whereas Daniel's coming and going, okay, hold on, let's test this for 10 days. If we look better than them, if we're stronger than them, then you'll adhere to what we're trying to do, which is a big risk. Now, Daniel had one thing on his side where he adhered to the principle that God is most important. God's going to show up and show off in his life. He's convinced of that. We know that from when you read through the entire story of Daniel. And so, verse 14, so he agreed to this and test them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier, better nourished than the other young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and wine and were to drink and gave them vegetables instead to drink water as well. So you see a drastic shift all of a sudden because Daniel took a risk. He knew what God had called him to do, the principles in his life, and he followed through on a godly principle, and all of a sudden they switch it. The very thing the king was being fed, they realized, is not good enough. And the kings in those days ate the best of the best. And here Daniel changes the game for his enemy, but through God showing up and showing off in him. And so we go on, Daniel, to these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief officials presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found no equal to Daniel and the rest of the guys that were with him. No equal. Because he adhered to a biblical principle. I wrote it like this in my notes. God honored Daniel's trust and allegiance by sovereignly working favorably for him among the heathen leaders. In this instant, he prevented persecution and led to respect, whereas later on, God permitted opposition against Daniel, which also elevated him. So as you continue to read the story, David didn't just have an easy life moving here. There were things that came against him, but all of it worked out for God's good. Great things come from those ups and downs in our lives. You have to have the downs so you recognize how high you are. One way or another, God honors those that honor him. And maybe that's a principle you want to stick to yourself. One way or another, God honors those that honor him. As you start into the new year, I know we're 7 days in, as you begin to put principles to your life, may they be God-honoring principles, and through those, God will show up and show off in your life. If you're missing out as you look back in the year, where was God showing up and showing off? Maybe you got to change some principles around in your life. And then from there, make the goals. Because I know it. This year, it's inevitable. Life, work, and family will collide if it hasn't already. And when it collides, you're going to go, what do I do and how do I handle this? You've got to choose to cheat. Because the only way I know is to cheat in the positive way, not the negative, not the hurt someone. It's in the principle we read today, is to cheat for the ones that I love. That I'm not going to be able to work 80 hours a week. all the time. We talk about this in next week. We're going to give you a sneak peek next week. We're going to talk about what's the difference between rhythm and balance in life. As these three things collide, is it possible to have them all balance out equal portion time? Or is there something called rhythm inside it? We're going to talk about that next week. And so I'm excited about this series is we're going to try to really get down to the nitty-gritty of what happens when life, work, and family collide. Because we all have them. We all have family. We all have some kind of job. And we have a life. And when they collide, it gets super messy. And so my hope is today Jesus spoke to you in something. That you're going to begin to make changes and you're going to choose to cheat. And yes, that means you might have to make drastic changes in your life, but I believe that if you do it, just as Daniel stepping out and staying to a godly principle, God blessed his life, he will bless your life. And I'm not talking about, because we think in Western culture, it's just money. Oh yeah, he's going to rain down money. Show me the money. That's not what I'm talking about all the time. That's not, sometimes the blessings are far greater than resources. And sometimes I need more than just money in my life to make me happy. Would you close your eyes for a second? What's Jesus speaking to you today? What is he clearly tapping, like that nudge, that just, you know it's you? Think about what are you going to do about it? What are the steps you need to take? Maybe what conversations you need to have with maybe you're married and you got to have a conversation with your husband or wife. Maybe you got to have a conversation with a coworker or an employee or an employer. And then who are you going to tell that you're making changes? Jesus, speak very clearly to us. As we drive home or drive to lunch, may you speak very clearly to us that we might know the next steps. And you might be able to speak clearly to where we need to begin to cheat a little bit. That we would know the principles in our life that we need to be sticking into our lives, that we need to grab a hold of this year. And may we this year become more like you, Jesus, and less like ourselves. Jesus, we love you. In your name, amen.